नमोस्तुते दयतं सुरतो पंगोर्मम मंदमतिर्गतिमत सर्वस्व पादाम्बुजौ राधा मदन मोहनौ श्रीमद् वृंदारण्य कल्पद्रुमदा श्रीमद् रत्नाकर सिंहासनस्थौ श्रीमान श्रीला राधा गोविंद देव प्रेष्टालभिः सेव्यमानौ स्मरामि श्रीमन् रासरासरं बीवं श्रीवरततस्थिता कर्षण वेणु सुरैर्गोपीर्गोपीनाथ श्रीस्तुनः तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वृंदयै तुलसी दिव्ययै प्रिययै केशवस्य च विष्णुभक्ति प्रदे देवी सत्यवतये नमो नमः श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा प्लीज रिपीट एवरीवन हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे श्रीमद् भगवद गीता महाग्रंथ की जय श्री हरिकथामृत महामहोत्सव की जय Please mute from all of your end if you're not muted. So we are continuing from last Wednesday. Thursday and Friday we could not do a class as we were busy. So I would request everyone to just make sure it's on mute from your end. So Sri Gita has clearly distinguished and delineated the characteristics of the non-devotional paths based on action, which is karma, and knowledge, gnana, and their corresponding achievable objectives of sense enjoyment, kama and moksha. So from karma, you can, by doing action, you incur a debt, right? So the debt is either punya or papa. So by acting, so by karma, acting means by performing an action, we incur a debt from it. When do we incur a debt? So Krishna says here, Sri Gita has clearly distinguished and delineated the characteristics of the non-devotional paths, corresponding achievable objectives, which is karma and jnana, and what are the corresponding achievable objectives of karma and jnana, kama and moksha respectively. Because karma will lead to desire, kama means in fact karma is performed because of kama. Kama means desire. So when we desire, we act. Again, it is like a cycle. So we desire and we act, we desire and we act. It works like that. So it goes hand in hand. Similarly, the jnana results in moksha. Are we the school who settle for moksha? We have to understand moksha in a proper perspective. Moksha in this context, what Sridhar Maharaj is saying is getting rid from the negative plane only. That moksha is talking about. He is not talking about the service life in Vaikuntha. That is also referred as moksha sometimes, but generally moksha means liberation from the material existence only. Doesn't mean that you have a positive engagement, dedication, land of dedication. We have not entered in this context. In this context, moksha means is just getting rid of the current problem situation, merging into the Brahma, or just basically realizing that I am part of Brahma and having a conception that I am one with you, and basically trying to end the existence. If we don't have the existence, how can we serve Krishna? Because that is Sevamayoham Lokam. Vaikuntha, Ayodhya, Dwaraka, Mathura, Vrindavan, there are different spiritual planes. These names might all give you an idea of the names of this world. Ayodhya is here in North India, Dwaraka is there in North India, Vrindavan is there in North India. What are we? One might question, what are you talking about? All these names are just the names which are given here for the places. So are the same names which present in the spiritual world? Actually, it is yes, because the names of spiritual world is not named after the material names. It is the other way around. The material sphere gets these names from the spiritual plane. And irrespective of what name we call, these pastimes which are performed, Ramachandra performs pastimes in Ayodhya, Krishna Chandra performs pastimes in Mathura, Dwaraka, and Vrindavana. So these pastimes are nothing but ongoing eternal pastimes in the spiritual world. When he descends to the material world, he just enacts it's like a copy of the play which is going on there eternally. There's no space time concept there. So here there is time concept. Everything, a second past means it is already gone to the history, books of history. So the past, the present, and the future. These three aspects are there in this world. Whereas in the spiritual dimension, there is no time. In fact, what determines time here? Time is determined by, basically, if you really look at it in a very simple way, day and night. Day and night is caused by sun. So sun causes day and night. So when the sun sets and rises, means is sun setting and rising? We say sun setting and rising. It's actually the earth which is revolving, rotating, and revolving around the sun. So when the light is available to the particular land, then we say sunrise. And then day arises. And when there is no sunlight, there is night. So sun is the light giver for this world, whereas in spiritual world there is no need of sun. Spiritual world itself is self illuminating. So there is no concept of time there, where these many sunsets, these many sunrises have come. Nothing like that. So we have to understand here the context which Sridhar Maharaj is saying. Gita clearly distinguishes and delineated the characteristics of the non-devotional path. So there are different paths which Krishna himself um, teaches that to Arjuna. Teaches means he is giving an insight to Arjuna. What are the different paths? Karma yoga, karma sannyasa yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga. All these, Krishna says, they are in one way non-devotional paths. They are self-motivated paths. They have some motivation. What is that motive they have? In one way, it is self-centered motives. Devotional path means it is not self-centered, it's self-giving. So we offer ourselves, we surrender. So only bhakti can basically make you to come to the path of Sharanagati, surrender. So that is why they are called non-devotional path. They're not devotional paths. Karma yoga and jnana yoga by itself. When karma yoga and jnana yoga is in support of bhakti, then it can be accepted. We act. We don't stop acting. Acting is always there. Action is always there. We never cease to act. Act is, that is the Icha Shakti, Kriya Shakti, and Jnana Shakti. These three are inherent in Jiva's domain. Means it is inherent to Jiva. Every Jiva does these three. It desires, it acts, and to act and desire, means when they have desire to act, they need knowledge. Otherwise, how can you act? Knowledge means what? All kinds of, means to knowledge means to know, means to be aware and to be conscious about something. For example, if someone is in coma, he is breathing, he is seeing, he is hearing, he is smelling, means all his senses are there, but is he really seeing? Is he really smelling? Is he really hearing? He might be hearing, only the apparatus is hearing, but the hearer, the seer, means the mind is not active. So the knowledge compartment is shut down there. Because there is no Jnana Shakti there is no Icha Shakti also in one way. Icha Shakti is shut down and Kriya Shakti is also shut down. So a coma patient is nothing but he's like a dead living, means there is no movement for him, means his body is just like a physical phenomena is happening where the food is being given to him to nourish his body just to live. The organs are acting, but the main um, function, which is main organ in one way, not the external organ, it is more of internal sense. It is called mind. That mind is absent. Mind is there, but it is not active. Mind is in one way, the connection is cut off. So karma and jnana are important, but at the same time, by they themselves being independent, they have no devotional qualities. So Arjuna rejects these two types of yoga system. He accepts the bhakti yoga. So therefore, the intelligent can note that by the statement yo yach shraddha seva sa eva shaha, one is identified by his particular faith. Sri Gita has drawn an objective comparison of different paths and their goals. Sri Gita has clearly, it is written here. Sri Gita has drawn an objective comparison. Objective comparison is given. It is drawing a very clear objective comparison of different paths: Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Ashtanga Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, and their goals also, thus disarming and exposing those who create confusion by supporting the concoction that the many paths and goals are all one. That's what we've been discussing from last week. We often hear, oh, don't worry, all the paths leads to the same destination, all are one. Just pick whatever is more convenient to you. The politicians use this, the nationalists use this, socialists use this, capitalists use this. They all use yoga system given in Bhagavad Gita to basically interpret and support their own isms. Let's say one who is a nationalist, he will always use, yesterday Yati Maharaj was giving a beautiful example. He will use the shloka of Gita and say that, one who dies for the country, one who, even they extract from Ramayana also. Rama says, Janani Janma Bhumishya Swargadapi Gariyasi. Even greater than heaven is one's own motherland. But what context did Rama say? They only take the shloka and say, look, love to motherland is higher than anything. Become a nationalist. So when you give your life and breath to the nation, then that is the highest prospect of your existence. That's what they say. But they don't really look at the context of Ramachandra when he's saying, Lakshmana says, after Ravana was killed, look at this beautiful Lanka, Ramachandra. It is so wonderful. Now it is yours because Ravan is killed. Now you can, stay here only. It is so nice. You can rule the whole world from Sri Lanka. Ramachandra says, no, Janani Janma Bhumishya means motherland where I've got birth. That is higher than anything for me. So look at the context. The whole context has changed now. He was not interested in anyone's land. That is why the statement was given that way. He was not like in a mood of just having more and more. Oh, this is mine. He did not come for the land at all. First of all, he came for higher reason. He came for his own pleasure. If you take, he came for Sita, but for Lokodhar he came. Means he also came to kill Ravan. So many reasons are there. Unlimited dimensions you can look at why Ramachandra's Ramayana happened actually in one way. Why he came down to Sri Lanka and killed Ravana. So the real meaning of this verse, how it should be understood, the context is, as I explained now, the motive was not to acquire the land. The motive was very different, very transcendental in one way. So Ramachandra was least interested in anyone's land. What did he do? He gave it to Vibhishan. So he made Vibhishan as the king, whose brother was Ravan, Vibhishan's brother. So that's what we have to understand. No isms can give us the highest prospect. At the same time, they are not actually the paths. Yes, they are required to run the society to a particular level. So we don't condemn people who are patriotic. We don't condemn people who are socialists or capitalists. They all have their own places, but we have to understand the capacity of each. In one way, it is all false prestige. false identification that I'm an Indian, I'm an Australian, I am a white, I'm a black, I'm a high court judge, I'm man, I'm woman. All these false designations actually lead us to a particular path, which where we find a lot of solace there. We find, oh, this path is so good. Actually, we feel that this is the highest. This is what it should be. Everyone should follow because we feel that it is harmonizing with our tendency and prejudice. We feel that is highest. We are not looking at from the uh, absolute perspective. Krishna is himself saying absolute truth is speaking here. He is saying that these are the paths which will lead to a particular destination, but not the highest destination. So if we take the path of karma, if we take the path of jnana, means how much knowledge can we acquire? So knowledge will not result in loving service to Krishna because if you think, okay, I will first try to understand everything by my intellectual prowess, then I will believe Krishna. Then I will have some faith on Krishna. Otherwise, I don't want to uh, trust God or believe that God exists or God is this kind of particular truth. So I'll have to first bring everything down to my understanding. I'll have to be convinced. So he'll apply logic, he will apply all kinds of pramanas, pratyaksha pramana, paroksha pramana, aparoksha pramana. All these pramanas is applied to basically understand the absolute truth. But when you are finite, it means that when you are finite means your senses are finite and your intelligence is finite as because that's also part of the senses. So when your intellect capacity is finite, how can you understand infinite? It's a simple logic actually. How can you understand infinite or how can you know infinite fully? By your finite means, which is defective. It's not only finite. Finite means by default, in one way it is defective. It means only finite which is not defective is Krishna. Actually, he is also finite. As Paramatma, he is smallest thing you can think of. He's smaller than the smallest. He is Anuraniya. There's atoms, subatoms, and nano particles now, and so many. Modern science is coming up with so much in detail, in depth, molecular level. They're going and seeing everything. They're trying to understand this universe by going deeper into the cell and atom. Whatever they can do, whatever they will go and find out that this is the smallest, he will be smaller than that. Means Paramatma is smaller than anything you can think of. That is one of the expansions. He is in both ends. He is Mahatma, he is Anuraniya. He is all accommodating, all pervasive. When he is all pervasive, he enters smallest thing and he is smaller than that. Even there you cannot compete. You cannot compete with him even becoming smallest. That is his capacity. Even though, but the difference is, even though he's the smallest of all the thing, he is all powerful as well. Means he is absolute, means he's infinite as well. Even though he is smallest, a part of infinite is also infinite. Infinite plus infinite, infinite. Infinite minus infinite, infinite. Infinite multiplied by infinite, infinite. Infinite divided by infinite, infinite. Do we understand? A part of the whole is also whole. It is not just a part which is come out of the whole. A part of the whole, that is how Krishna is. Because whole means infinite in one way. Part in this world we can, like if you take out the peel of the orange, one peel, is it the whole orange anymore? No, it's not, because it's lost a part of it. So it is not complete anymore. It is partially complete only. It's not fully complete because it has lost its part. Krishna is not like that. He is like a candle. One candle is burning. You can lit 1,000 candles from it. Will the first candle jyoti or prakasha or the illumination comes down because you've lit so many candles? It remains the same. It remains the same. Yet, without the first candle, there could not be 1,000 candles. Means everything is come from him, not by not basically decreasing his capacity. It's like sun rays are coming out of sun. Is it shrinking the sun because he is emitting heat and light? No, in fact, if it is, like it's like diesel engine, you run more, it gets more, it runs better. I'm just giving crude example. So Krishna is absolute, infinite, and infallible. He has unlimited qualities. So if we have to, what are we trying to achieve? That is was first thing we should draw. Bhagavad Gita is all about trying to know who am I, what is the reality, is there any reality beyond this world? If there is, what is the connection between me and that reality? Is reality a person or just a light or energy, pocket of energy? These are all the questions we get in our mind when we look at any spiritual path. When we are trying to go in the spiritual path, these are the questions we get, right? And yes, knowledge is very important. Knowledge answers all these questions. We are not rejecting knowledge out and out. Knowledge is very important. At the same time, knowledge by itself cannot conquer Krishna. Knowledge should give rise to make the Shraddha stronger, faith. If knowledge is not supporting faith, if knowledge is independent by its own, then knowledge cannot produce Krishna or catch Krishna or come clasp Krishna. It can basically deviate you and make you feel that you are very great. In fact, it might even take you to liberation, but liberation is considered as very, very low thing or even very demoniac thing by the devotees of Krishna, because there is no service in liberation. It is nothing but a selfish motive. I just don't want to be in this material world. It is a havoc, it is a crazy place, whatever feeling we have. Or one might not have a problem with the material world, but he might be inquisitive. I just don't feel any feel any higher thing here. I want higher thing. That might be also the case, but very rare. But generally people turn towards liberation because they are fed up. They had enough with this world, because this is Mrithiloka. Everything is deteriorating. Everything is falling apart. You see that in this world, everything is falling apart. It is coming up, it's going down. It's coming up, it's going down. For us, what is it? It is falling apart. In one way, we are every day we are getting closer to death. Anytime, even if we say that, okay, let's take an example. Nowadays, there's no guarantee when we die. We can die any moment. But let's, for the sake of understanding, let's say we live for next 60 years more. If we are 40 years, we are guaranteed sealed for 100 years. Still, every day past, we are getting closer to the death. So one might go and have a look at the sunset. So, oh, beautiful sunset. Yeah, we don't disagree there. If it's a nice, beautiful sunset, we appreciate the sunset. At the same time, we should have a philosophical mind also behind everything which we see. Not being negative, but at least to understand the reality. Sometimes everything is in so-called intellectual people, so-called atheists. They, oh, don't, you're all negative. Try to appreciate the beauty here. We're not the people who always condemn things here. No, the material world, there are
Prabhu,
amazing
I can't
things
hear
as
you,
well.
Prabhu.
You can't hear me at all? How about others?
No.
We can hear you, Prabhu.
You can all hear?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes.
Is it only for
Is
me
it-
or for others also? I'm not sure.
Others are hearing properly, Mataji.
I can hear. I can hear.
Clearly?
Yeah, clearly, very clearly.
Kila Mataji, what I'll do is, you just log in again, Mataji. It might fix the issue. Akhila Mataji, can you hear me?
Sorry, I will disconnect and call you back again. Sorry.
Yeah. Disconnect and then log in again. It might fix the issue. Okay, so yeah, so every time we go and look at the sunset, we should have this thing in back of the mind that so the sun is taking away one more day of my life, you know. So he's coming again and again, and every day he's coming, he's taking a day away from me. Yes, we enjoy the sunset, no doubt, but at the same time we should have the proper conception behind everything in this material world. Means we should see everything in relation to the
Thank you.
absolute truth. And is it okay now?
It's okay. Yeah.
Okay. So here Sridhar Maharaj is saying the path of karma, the path of jnana, they will all lead to either more enjoyment or suffering here, or it will take us to maximum liberation. Liberation means, again, as I said, there are different kinds of liberation: sayujya, samukya, salokya, sarupya, shashti. But we are not interested in actually in any of these. We are only interested in bhakti, which is there is no end. Bhakti leads to bhakti, more bhakti. So if you perform bhakti, it will give more bhakti. So it will take us to the land of relationship, land of service. That is Goloka Vrindavan, where it is a natural flow of love is existing there. So we will remain as a eternal servant of Krishna. So we'll have a personality, means we'll have a form. It might be any form, and we will serve Krishna fully. Full consciousness is there, and he will reciprocate that love. That is the beauty of Bhakti Yoga. So is it clear? Anyone has any questions there? Okay, so we'll move forward. So Sri Gita has drawn an objective comparison of different paths and the goals, thus disarming and exposing those who create confusion by supporting the concoction that the many paths and goals are all one. In this respect, the following verse 6.4647 deserves special attention. Tapasvibhyo yogi gnanibhyo pimato dhikah karmibhyashadiko yogi tasmad yogi bhavarjuna योगिनामपि सर्वेषां मद्गतेनान्तरात्मनः श्रद्धावान् भजते यो मां समे युक्तात्मो मतः. Tyaga or renunciation has been completely condemned, and its futility has been emphatically asserted. This proclamation shows the conclusive, intrinsic gift of Sri Gita. Karma Yoga, or offering one's action to the Supreme Lord without provincial interest, is preferred above karma tyaga or renunciation of action. And finally, full surrender to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, with every action dedicated by divine inspiration, by his loving service, is the ultimate and supreme teaching of Sri Gita. By a meticulous, deep study of Sri Gita, one will find it to be the king of all scriptures as the bestower of the highest devotion. In its full-fledged nature, this devotion is the most supreme love divine, love for the all-attractive supreme personality, Sri Krishna, reality the beautiful. Sri Krishna is reality the beautiful. Sridhar Maharaj is saying karma will, there are different kinds of karma yoga. There is karma tyaga, there is karma sannyasa yoga, that is karma tyaga, and there is karma or dedicate, that is, one is karma yoga and karma sannyasa yoga, means renouncing all the karmas, renouncing the karma. One who says, I don't, if I act, I get bound. I don't act at all. Actually, it is not possible. It's just his mind playing with him. How can you not act in this world? Even thinking that I will not act is an action. So because your mind is acting there. So even let's say for the sake of discussion, okay, that is not acting. Okay, but is it practical? Can someone go to a place where he'll just get to a yogic state, do meditation, not take anything from the nature? He will take air anyways, but let's say air is abundant, so you don't really incur any debt by taking air. So air and water, if he drinks, and breathes, but if he doesn't take anything, is it possible? First of all, it's not possible. It's not practical. Even if it is possible, it's actually not complete. So karma sannyasa is condemned by Krishna. He said, plane of tyaga, renunciation, is actually foolishness, and it doesn't exist actually. It's just a mind game. It's a mind trick. Many people do that, and we all revere. In this world, everyone gets reverence if he slightly does something differently. What to talk about yogic people? Of course, when someone sees a very austere Baba who is in a cave or in Himalaya or somewhere, or even in our own land where he's engaged in a bit more different kind of austerities, we revere them. We think that they're great personalities. But what is their motive? It's not just the form, it's not just what their action is, it's the motive which makes them great. It is the conception what they have. If their motive, if it is only to gain pratishtha, or if their motive is only to gain liberation, it is a lower thing. So karma sannyasa or karma tyaga is not recommended. Above that, offering the results of karma to Krishna is recommended. You know, and there is karmanye vadhikaraste mapaleshu kadachana. Krishna establishes that kind of karma. He says, if you want to still act and offer the results to me. So, but the best way of acting is above than that, above the karma, offering the results of it is actually acting for Krishna's pleasure only, not for anything for our pleasure. So that is bhakti yoga, that is devotional path. When you act in that plane where every action you do, it is for the pleasure of Krishna. How do we do that? Is it possible? You know, we are doing so many things in this material world. We are working, we are going serving, so many other different people. We might be even engaged in some unethical jobs as well from the Vedic perspective. Every land's law is different. So one land's law might support what you're doing is a good thing, but another land will say, okay, it's very unethical or illegal, irrespective of it. So we are, one can say, how is it possible to work for Krishna when we are engaged in working for the government, working for the private firms, and also our own senses we are always serving. We desire to eat that, we desire to do this. So many urges are there, the body urges. How is it you can say that you can work always in Krishna consciousness, means work for the pleasure of Krishna? It's not easy. At the same time, we start somewhere. We have the concept that yes, whatever action I do, it has to be directed towards Krishna. Krishna should be in the center. When he is in the center, means what does it mean? We keep Krishna in the center. Means that I want, that is the highest ideal, that every minute I live, every moment I live, it should be for satisfying Krishna. So I go and work so that I can maintain my family, bringing up them in Krishna consciousness. I can do particular things so that I can get more comfortable in one way, so that I don't have to get bogged down in this material world from so many aspects, so that I can perform my bhajan. So every action which is directed toward Krishna, where the concept is, I want to become a better devotee, I want to serve Krishna, I want to go closer to Krishna, that is actually karma free life. You don't get karma because you are only you don't incur any debt because you're not taking for your own senses. You are having the intention to go closer to Krishna. So I'll disconnect it here, and because it's going to get disconnected by itself anyways, and join back in a second, please. So I request all of you to join back again. Thank you.